Hello again. Here's a good question for the yes or no treatment, and certainly a current one. Should I get the coronavirus vaccine? Of course, it's becoming available fairly soon here in Britain and in the US, so for many people it's a no-brainer. They're going to take the shot whenever they can get it, but for others, they're wondering whether they should or not. So let's look at the background here. First of all, of course, we're all aware of the coronavirus, the COVID virus that's basically brought the world to a halt and is certainly disturbing economies and causing disruption of a sort that we haven't seen in decades. And we also know that there has been an enormous, some say warp speed endeavor worldwide to develop both vaccines and treatments for this condition. At present, there are, at least so far as the UK and the US are concerned, there are 4 treatments for apparent successes in the final stages of testing and about to be made available to us for vaccination. The one by Pfizer, the Oxford AstraZeneca one by Johnson & Johnson, and one by another US company called Moderna. And there are 8 others in the final stages of testing around the world. There are 234 projects underway to develop a vaccine for this condition in every country in the world virtually, and there are many more endeavors to come up with a medicine that will sort you out if you get it, perhaps some of the sort that Donald Trump had when he went into Walter Reed Hospital. So there's a lot going on, and as a consequence of that, of course, there are many people who are a bit nervous. Oh dear, should I have this vaccine? For most others, it's, as I said earlier, probably a no-brainer. But we do have to examine the issues here. I guess 2 other comments are worth making. We should remind ourselves what a vaccine is. It's basically a way of giving you a kind of a small dose of the disease to activate your immune system so that when the real thing comes along, you'll be ready to deal with it. And of course, that's a tried and proven technology that's been used over and over again, going back to the discovery of smallpox disease and the vaccine to defeat it. One other thing, there are, of course, priorities for when the vaccination program starts. Here in the UK, apparently next month in December. Well, the starting people will be, unsurprisingly, care home and health system workers who must protect themselves in the course of doing their jobs. And alongside of those people will be of course, the residents and patients in care homes, and right after them, the over 80s, and simply because the experience to date suggests that people in that age range are more vulnerable to getting very ill or even dying if they contract the coronavirus. And then after that will be varying age ranges and levels of severe underlying health conditions, all the way down to the final lowest priority group, which is probably the biggest, the under 50s with no underlying health conditions. That's the way we're going to do it here in Britain. Slightly different perhaps in the US. In France, quite different. In France, it's being started out with the same people, but quickly getting to shopkeepers and those who wait in the public, because those people are quite vulnerable before they even get to some of the older segments of the population. But in any case, there's a thought-through priority framework for the offering of the vaccination when it does become available, and that's being done country by country. So, as I said before, there are some think that's absolutely a great idea and others not. So let's examine those questions. First of all, let's look at the yes people, those who say, oh, absolutely you should get this. And it's simply a question, really, of the very high probability that protecting yourself from this vaccine will prevent you from getting the disease, as simple as that. The best candidate at the moment, the Pfizer vaccine, the one that's going to be most immediately available, claims, I think, a 95% effectiveness level, as does the coming Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And when you think about it, that's awfully high, given the fact that we all virtually go for the flu vaccine, and that's only got about a 50% effectiveness level. So how can you argue with something like that? Secondly, there are those who say they want to protect the world, actually, from disease. If virtually everyone who can gets this shot when they can, that will make the notion of herd immunity more likely to protect us all from the spread of the disease and our ability to return to normal. The idea of herd immunity is that if a very high percentage of the population is protected against getting the disease, then of course they won't be in a position to pass it to others and the disease will die out. But if many people resist it, it will be much harder to achieve that level of mass protection. And then finally, a not inconsiderable reason for taking it up is that certainly in the US and in the UK, it won't cost you anything. And for many, and perhaps in other parts of the world, that could be a very real consideration. But the summary here is that, look, it's far more likely to do you good than do you harm, so for heaven's sakes, accept the offer of the vaccination. So what do people who are opposed to taking it, who are reluctant to take the vaccination, what do they say? What are their reasons for saying, no, I'm not going to accept this? Well, first of all, some would say, well, I've already had it, I think, so I don't need it. And I guess there's a certain amount of logic to that, but the science is incomplete. We're not sure whether that's the case or not, but that's a good reason for not undergoing the trouble of even having the vaccine. The second one is, well, we don't know what the side effects of this might be, because of course we haven't had any long-term studies of the consequences of taking the shot, obviously, because even the tests have only begun less than a year ago, and so therefore we don't and can't know if there could be any long-term untoward effects, some of which could be very unpleasant. Another consideration is that we don't even know if these vaccines will stop us from catching and spreading the disease, only that it will prevent us from getting ill once we do get it. Well, that's not a very adequate and complete kind of protection. Maybe I should wait until we have something that we know that will do the whole job. Next, well, we don't even know if this virus is going to mutate, that is, to change in some very complicated way, and in a way that the vaccine that I've been given wouldn't even work. And of course, if that happens, then we'll need another vaccine in order to deal with the mutated version, or we'll need multiple vaccines, or whatever. There's just so much uncertainty, and the time frame is so short here that I think I'm better off just waiting, really. And then finally, I'm really reluctant to get vaccinated because of just the overall level of uncertainty that I've mentioned, because we've had such a short time frame here to really do the job as it should be done properly. And on top of that, I don't really believe anything governments tell me. We get lied to so often. Politicians have their own agendas. They just want to get reelected. They want to look good. They keep putting things off, et cetera, et cetera. You really don't want to put your life in the hands of people who cover things up so often, who misrepresent things, who lie just to cover themselves. So for all of those reasons, I've decided just to forget about this thing. At some point in the future, I might reconsider, but just not on. Well, what's my take on all of that? I would say that it's just a question of probabilities, really. And the probability that these vaccines, particularly those that we've seen kind of at the head of the foot race, are going to do the job, are so high that it just simply makes sense to accept them. Of course, nothing is certain in this life. There are uncertainties around, but one thing's for sure: the likelihood that you'll catch the disease without the vaccine is a lot greater than the one that you're faced with if you get it. So for heaven's sakes, take it. I mean, there's not a good enough reason as far as we can see now to avoid doing it. Well, I hope you like it. And one more thing. Obviously, until you've had the vaccination, for heaven's sakes, follow the usual 3 rules that have been so handed down. They're so persuasive. They're so universally accepted as being good advice. Wash your hands, keep a social distance, and wear your mask. Well, I hope you like that. I hope that's something that will give you hope and inspiration and the information you need to make your decision. And if so, please give me a like, the usual thing. Please subscribe, comment, etc. Hit the notification bell, and I'll see you with the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.